Welcome to the Therapist HQ, your weekly pep talk for private practice pros. Let's dive in.
This episode is brought to you by Powbox. If you're a practice owner and you're still sending secure emails that make people log into a portal just to read them, then you already know the headache. Passwords nobody remembers, messages that sit unread, and clients calling the front desk instead of just reading their email. That is why I switched my own practice over to Powbox. It encrypts every email automatically the moment it leaves my inbox, so it just lands in the recipient's inbox like a normal email. No portal, no extra login. If you're looking for a new, secure, HIPAA-compliant email provider, the details will be in the show notes with an exclusive deal just for our listeners. Hello and welcome back to the Therapist HQ podcast, your weekly private practice pep talk. My name is Alicia Murray, and as always, I am so glad that you're here. And today we are joined by Marisa Ronquillo, who is an LMFT and the founder of Insightful Roots Therapy, which is a trauma-focused group practice serving adults all throughout California. She specializes in helping high-achieving adults heal from anxiety, trauma, and perfectionism through evidence-based approaches like EMDR. Marisa is passionate about creating a therapy experience where both clients and clinicians feel genuinely supported and enjoy sharing honest conversations about mental health, private practice, and what it really takes to build a values-driven business. So Marisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, of course. So many parts of your story that I want to get into, but I guess the first question that comes to mind is, how did you become interested in group practices? Did you have your own experience working with them? And then how did you sort of meld into creating your own from there?
So my very first experience being a therapist, I worked for a group private practice. I loved the autonomy. I had a really great supervisor at the time who gave the autonomy but still had structure. And then I went into IOP and loved managing and supervising people. Worked my way up to clinical director, and then kind of just decided. I met actually my very first associate who works underneath me now in the IOP. She was just a little receptionist at the time. Went back to school, got her master's degree. I loved working with her. I thought sometimes she had better insight than some of the therapists that work there. So I was so excited to see her go on and do the thing. So I saw her post on Instagram that she was graduating, and I was like, hey, do you want to come into private practice? Are you interested?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I fell into starting my own group practice, is knowing somebody and really wanting to work with them more. But I feel that's most people who start group practice is you kind of stumble into it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it definitely is one of two directions. I've heard of people who are I want to do group practice from the start. And then others who are hey, I want to do what you're doing. And the easiest natural way is well, just come do it with me. We can do this, together under the same roof. And it makes for a really beautiful experience, I think, for everybody.
Right. Yeah. I think I always knew I wanted to do group practice, but I thought oh, that's when I'm a real adult, when I'm in my 40s or something. So it was kind of cool that it started to happen earlier.
Yeah. Did you ever have a moment in that process where you were am I truly ready for this? What does readiness even feel like when it comes to starting a group practice?
I don't know if I ever had that thought, because I think I'm someone who's always I'm going to bet on myself and I will figure it out. But I think there's times throughout the journey where my husband's he's the one that tends to slow me down and be okay, let's really think about this and create a plan. So, but he's very loving and supportive, but helps slow me down.
Everyone needs that logistical person in their ear who's hey, maybe we should think about that.
Yeah.
In your own experiences, do you feel you ever experienced any of these sort of red flag group practices or boundaries or ethics that I think a lot of people listen to? Or do you feel overall you had pretty positive experiences yourself?
I think overall I've had pretty positive experiences, but I've had a lot of friends in group practices that have had really sketchy things that don't seem sketchy until you really think about it sometimes. One of my friends who's starting her group practice now is thinking about what is she going to offer to her associates to make her practice stand out. But she's used to coming from places that she actually had to pay for the EHR. She had to pay for her own phone service, her email, all these things. They essentially just provided the referrals and supervision. And I'm
wow.
No. like in California, and you need to be out offering all of these things, and they have to be a
Yeah.
W-2 employee. You're having to pay for their taxes. So I've luckily had great experiences, and I feel like that's helped me. But I've seen a lot of people have really awful experiences and think that's just kind of normal too.
Yeah. I think it's great though. And it's very refreshing to talk to somebody who like had a great group practice experience and is able to translate that into providing their own great group practice experience. Cause I think I hear from so many of like, well, I created this group practice out of these like horrible experiences that I've had, and I'm trying to create better for other therapists around me. And I think that there's almost a bigger learning curve, kind of like you're saying, of like, well, what is the bare minimum and what is considered like exemplary or standout benefits? Or like, how do I really make people feel like heard and mattered inside of the practice?
And I think it can almost be kind of dangerous sometimes too. Like if you don't get some like guidance or support or like processing
Hmm.
through, like, what does this actually look like for me? Because, and then we see this a lot with clients too, right? Like they come in and they're like, my parents did X, Y, and Z, and I never want to do that. So they swing to like the opposite extreme, but
Yeah.
then that also tends to be kind of detrimental in a different kind of way. So I think it's similar for group practice owners where it's like, well, I was treated like this and I got paid minimum wage and like barely got anything. So they want to do like above and beyond, but then now they're like overpaying people and like there's like no profit margin for them to get paid for the time they're doing the things, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so funny you mentioned that because somebody actually wrote in from the community asking how to crunch the numbers to make sure that you're not losing money and preferably that there is some sort of profit margin to be had. How do you feel like you sort of created that initially?
I really had to sit down with like what my numbers look like, just me, and figure out like what does that look like? And then what would it look like to even hire somebody, right? Write out all of those numbers, the email, the EHR, like my time for supervision, right? That's taking away from me earning money in that hour or 2 hours a week, whatever it was. But then also having a CPA, I think the cheesy classic, like you have to spend money to make money. Like you really need to invest in somebody who really understands like the financials of it. We're not taught that in grad school. So like investing in somebody who can like sit down with you and be like, let's budget this to make sure it actually makes sense for you and the business so that it's sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you feel like there was ever moments where you were like, I want to offer this, but it maybe doesn't financially make sense, or this is something that I can squeeze in the budget somewhere? Like, how do you make those decisions about kind of like what prioritizes over others?
The time. I'm like, I
Yeah,
wish I could pay you guys so much, all the
I
money,
know.
and give you, stipends to pay for your student loans and like, really awesome health benefits and like all these things, but it's just not in the budget unless we were charging crazy amounts of money that like no one's going to pay for therapy. So it is really tough. And I try to stay in like my like business hat when I'm making those decisions instead of just like me, Marissa, the person, or me, the therapist. Like I have to be like business owner when I make those decisions. And it's a lot easier for me to be like, no, there has to be a firm boundary here. Like we can't offer X, Y, and Z. It's not in the budget, you know? I think that's something that's helpful for me. It's just to get into that mindset, business owner.
Yeah. And I think so often people also ask, like, how do you balance? Like, we come from being a helper, like therapists, I think naturally are helpers at heart. And how do we transition into, even in our own solo practice, of like, I'm a business owner, I have to make hard decisions. And I think that only amplifies in group practice because now you're responsible for others. And I think that it feels very simple, but I think in practice it becomes a little intricate of that separation of like, I can't make these decisions out of a place of being a helper, and I can't make these decisions out of a place of like wanting to be liked or wanting to retain therapists. Like the therapists are going to stay if it's a good environment. And I think that, like you said, we can swing so far the other way that there might not be a practice at the end of the day because we're, running off more than we can handle.
Or you might grow resentment too, because now
Yeah.
you're having to do more sessions to make up for the money that is being put over here. And I imagine most of us wanting to start a group practice somewhat because we were hoping for a little bit more money,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I think there should also be a huge passion of supervising or like an idea of what it feels like to manage people because that is very different than supervising, right? They're like different hats you have to wear. So you have to be someone who likes to wear different hats.
Yeah. How do you feel like your own experiences help to like shape you for this role? Or maybe like what can listeners do now to sort of help them shape for this role? I'm not sure if people will even recognize like how much their past experiences could help them.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's a million experiences, but I just feel like that's such a big question. I'm like, I don't even know how to answer right now. I mean, I'm an eldest daughter, so like I'm just used to taking on
That'll
everything.
do it.
That just like sums it all up right there. But yeah, I mean, being in group practice before, seeing like that it could be beneficial, profitable, having experience in IOP, managing, clinically supervising people, and being in a higher level of care, I feel like that made me a lot more confident in like, okay, I can step into group practice and know what is appropriate to treat here, when to like refer out. Because I think a lot of people that don't have experience being in a higher level of care tend to keep people in weekly therapy longer than is like helpful to them. So I think all of those things kind of like helped put me to where I'm at today.
How do you feel like you are able to build a culture where the clinicians in your practice feel genuinely supported, which I feel like is a big term because I think when we look at group practice, it's more than, they're providing my EHR for me, like you mentioned, or these sort of like base level feelings of support. Like, how do we create that in the culture of our group practice?
So I feel like I might be doing something slightly different than most people when they think of group practice, but my whole thing was I found, well, like I knew Ashna before I hired her, right? Because we worked in IOP and I felt like she had great insight and I was like, she's kind of like a mini me, right? Maybe a little more like sassy than me, but like she's a little mini me. So I think for me wanting to have like more of a smaller boutique cash pay group practice, it was important to have someone that was like a mini me because there's a lot of referrals. The brand was built around me. People were interested in working with me. So I needed someone who was going to be similar to me, that offered similar insight, had similar passions to me. I feel like having people similar to me so that I kind of knew like, what would I want and need, right? Also, like asking them, but if I had people that are sort of mini me's, they're going to want similar things that I would want. And then something I've done recently is encouraging them to start their own Instagram profiles because I know that they're not going to stay with me forever. And I love the idea of helping them figure out what does it feel like to market myself? What does it feel like, to sell on stories? What does it feel like to post reels? Because I want them, once they do decide to leave, they have a whole referral stream outside of Psych Today or, whatever website they build. So I feel like offering them things that maybe they can't find elsewhere.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you brought up this topic too, because what do you feel like your views are on like clinicians that come to your practice and then eventually leave down the road? Because there's lots of conversations around non-competes, around like moonlighting, like all of these different sort of pieces inside of these group practice contracts. And it already sounds like you are highly supportive of folks that are leaving your practice. But what does that like look and feel like for you?
I think, again, I have to kind of come from like business mindset. Like you have to wear the different hats again. But I don't think, I haven't played around with the numbers too much, but like, I don't know if it's profitable to have a licensed person, at least the way that I have the like group practice structured right now, unless again, we raise the rates a lot. So I imagine they're going to stay with me until they get licensed and then they're going to want to start their own thing. And the thing that like I kind of instilled from the very beginning of the relationship is just like honesty and communication, right? So I knew from the get-go that both of them eventually want to have their own practices. So like knowing that in my mind helps me like, okay, what can I offer you to like help get you there, right? I think to be successful in private practice, you have to believe that there's enough clients for everybody to be happy and like have enough money in their bank accounts. Otherwise, like it just doesn't feel good, right? It feels like you're competing with everybody and that just doesn't feel right. So maybe I can't offer the highest pay or all the benefits or all these things, but I can offer you and teach you marketing because I think I've gotten pretty good at it in the past 2 years.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's funny because in my area, I have friends who are like, you're the group practice owner I refer all the clinicians to. And I'm like, I feel like I am the bare minimum of like, like you, I expect people to go out on their own eventually. And I feel like by like answering the questions they have and just supporting them in that and helping them to transition their clients, like it feels like the bare minimum. But I recognize that there are so many roadblocks that they hit in other practices where, they're being threatened with lawsuits if they take their clients with them. And they are, just being met with a lot of like adversarial owners over those transitions. And I think like wearing that business hat, like you said, and I always tell myself, like, this is the cost of doing business. Like, this is hiring employees, losing employees. Every single business is going to go through that. And I'm not sure why culturally in group practices that's become so like hard to swallow, maybe, or maybe hard to process that clinicians are going to come and go. And then we just start the process over. We lean on our marketing, we lean on our referral sources. And if we've done it once, we can certainly do it again.
Right. I think it also like depends for me because if you just came to my practice and like got a full caseload and left like in 3 to 6 months, like
Yeah.
yeah, I would feel used, right? But if you're going to
Yeah.
commit to staying here for like a year or two, like I see that
Yeah.
as an investment for both of us, and like that's
Hmm.
okay. Again, as long as you're like honest about it. But yeah, if someone came in, that wouldn't feel great to like be used for the like marketing and referrals.
Yeah.
But also, non-competes are not legal in most states.
Right.
So I know people use it to kind of like threaten and scare, but check your state to make sure if that's in California, it's not legal. So
Not
we can
here
put it in
either.
a contract, but it's not enforceable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we've met here too. And I tell people, but they don't want to pay lawyer fees. And I think they feel like genuinely very scared, especially if they're newly licensed and now they're kind of already facing these. But yeah, I know in New York, it is not. And then the ethics kind of double down on it when they say, the transition of clients have to be given those 3 options. And they are very clear in the New York ethics about what that looks like in terms of taking care of the clients, which is the ultimate goal of the therapist in their transition.
Right. Not to abandon them.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. What does hiring look like for you? So, in the sense of like, we're talking about keeping clinicians a year or two. And I think that's a very successful run to keep a clinician in a group practice. But how are you personally putting feelers out there for new clinicians, interviewing them to make sure that they are a good fit for you?
My first hire, I already knew her, right? I still did like a clinical interview with her just to kind of see, from when
Yeah.
I knew her to like being out of her master's program, what does her insight, her education kind of like look like? My second hire, I actually didn't like purposely look for anybody, but I had this like mindset of like, if someone came along and had X, Y, and Z, I would potentially think about hiring them. And then I saw her post in a Facebook group that she was looking for a group practice to join. She had X, Y, and Z. And I was like, that's really weird that I just had this thought last week. And then this pops up. Like it kind of felt like fate or
So
something.
cool.
But I did sort of like a vibe check, met her, see if we even like got along. And then I did like a clinical interview, which was like an hour. And I just had like a bunch of questions of like, how would you handle the situation? Or like, here's a vignette and like, tell me what you would diagnose with and like how you might treat or help them.
Yeah, I think that, and I love that you said it was an hour long because I think folks try to be overly mindful of interviewees' time. But I think for a role like a therapist, like you really need time to like get insight into those clinical skills.
Right. And think about and ask questions like there were lots of things that happened in IOP that were not okay. Or like I thought like, wow, I thought we taught this in grad school, but I guess not. So I had a long list of things like how would you handle a client drinking in session, like drinking alcohol in session? What would you do? Like break it
Mhm.
down for me. Because somehow that has happened multiple times in, previous experiences and people were okay with it. And I'm like, what? No, we need to like do other things. So I had a lot of fears of like hiring somebody and I wanted to make sure she knew how to handle it appropriately.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's good advice too for people listening of like thinking of things that have happened to you or around you clinically and making sure that you're able to parse those things out.
Yeah, huge.
So, kind of putting like this owner CEO hat on, what is the extra stress? Is there extra stress? I know somebody asked, is it worth the extra stress of growing into this group practice versus solo? What's been your experience with managing all of that?
It is a lot more stress, I would say.
Yeah.
But I would say personally, if I could like go back and do something different, I would have hired a virtual assistant sooner than I did. Like having support around you because you cannot do everything. You can't be having a full caseload, supervising associates, interns, marketing, taking care of yourself, being present with your family. Like it's a lot. So having virtual assistant, CPA, and probably a business coach too, because it's a lot to take on. You're taking on multiple new hats to wear. But I think you have to be really passionate about like supervising or like managing for the stress to be worth it. because financially, I mean, it doesn't make a ton more money. There's a lot
Hmm.
other things you can do to make more like passive income or extra income that maybe not be as stressful. So I would say you have to have that passion to really want to nurture like more therapists.
Yeah, I totally agree. When people say group practice is a passive income source, I'm like, I haven't found the passive nature of it yet.
Nope.
It is yet to be seen.
And that's even with like, I have a virtual assistant and she helps do a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, I'm still doing a ton of things that she can't do, right? I'm
Yeah.
reviewing notes. I'm sitting in supervision multiple hours a week. I'm, managing consultation calls. They handle some of their calls, but sometimes people, schedule with me and then I pass them off to one of them.
Mhm. I think that I was like you. I think my first maybe 9 or 12 months in group practice, I did not have a virtual assistant yet. And then when I finally hired one, I was like, my gosh, this is what the other side feels like. It is, you don't even realize how much like answering emails and voicemails and text messages and like coordinating, getting folks' questions answered and getting them on the calendars. It's a lot of hours each week.
And Canva. I hate Canva so much. I pass off all the Canva stuff to my virtual assistant.
So
I
great.
love editing a reel. I'll do that all day, but Canva cannot stand.
And you know what? I think that it needs to be said that it's okay to pass off tasks that we don't like. Because I think so often it's like pass off the tasks that, financially make sense. And it's like, I did not start a private practice to be unhappy. Like, I want to pass along tasks that like I genuinely don't enjoy doing, which is why I also hired a biller. Because if I had to call an insurance company for out of network benefits one more time, I was about to throw in the towel. So I think even just like hiring, if you have the availability financially, like hiring out the things that you dread doing every week, it just gives you so much time and mental clarity and freedom to then do more for the practice. Like I genuinely believe like you will make that money back by using that time towards good and towards growth and towards supervision and towards hiring. Like there's so many other things that you could be doing besides this task that you keep putting off and that you loathe doing and then you have to unwind from after. Like it's just it's too much for one person to take on.
Right. And even if you don't make that money directly back, like you were saying, the time and energy that I would have to spend with my family and actually be present and likable, in
Yes.
those times instead of just like unwinding or grumpy because I had to spend 2 hours on Canva editing a post. Like, no, just have someone else handle it. But
Yeah.
also, if can't like financially afford hiring a VA, like pausing, right? Not going into group practice yet, because there are a lot of
Mhm.
finances in the beginning of hiring a new person before really generating money, because it takes a while to build up
Yeah.
their caseload.
Yeah, it does. Do you feel like you have like a certain percentage or number in mind that you try to either have saved up or have allotted when hiring somebody? Like, what does that look like or feel like?
Again, both of my situations have been like somewhat, they've fallen into my lap
Yeah.
and I have sort of made it work, but I always added like an extra client or two a month, 2 months before I started, they were going to start, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So that I had like a little bit of extra like wiggle room in there.
Well, I think even that is sort of like math in and of itself, because I think as therapists in private practice, we can do math by client sessions pretty easily as far as like what we need, who we need to see in order to meet what. And I think even that exactly, like maybe we need to add 1 to 3 clients a month. And, that'll even after taxes will give us, maybe an extra $300 or $400 in wiggle room as we bring someone on and hire out help and transition. And I think it can be stretched, a decent way, like adding someone to our EHR and our email. And if it's more virtual assistant hours every month or billing every month, like it definitely, those couple client sessions that we can take on, helps to be that buffer.
Yeah, definitely.
How about vacations? We had somebody else ask, how do you take vacations or time out of the office as a group practice owner?
I think it's similar to like how I just answered that one. Before taking a vacation, I took on a couple more clients knowing that I was going to take, because I just took vacation 2 weeks off in June.
Amazing.
And I knew that like I was only going to work for half of June. So like purposely planning ahead of time. And luckily we had like a huge influx of referrals in February or March. And I already knew that the vacation was happening at that point. So I kind of didn't say no to any new clients and just started working a little bit more. But I knew it was like for a reason, right? I was going to go on the vacation, not that this was going to be indefinite or anything. For supervision wise, I even had
Mhm.
one of them kind of reach out because she did have something strange sort of happen, and she called me and we talked about it while I was on vacation. And they both knew that, like, it's okay to call me ahead of time. And then we just did an extra hour of supervision when I got back that
Mhm.
following week. And
Yeah.
then the VA just handled phone calls and
The
emails and
rest.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a very realistic picture, honestly, because unless you have an appointed like clinical director, which not a lot of small private practices that I know of are able to sort of anoint somebody to the clinical director position because it's a very expensive position to pay because of all the tasks they're taking on. But I think just knowing that, like, sure, you could be contacted if there's an emergency and just having that precedent out there is just good realistically to keep in mind.
Yeah. So it's possible. You can take vacation while owning a group.
You can, you can. And it's just up to chance if, you're going to be contacted. Yeah, totally. Is there anything else that you would do differently if you were growing from a solo practice to a group practice today?
I think again would just be hiring the VA and having them probably at least a month before like hiring anybody on. One, to like help you
Mm,
with all the stuff that it takes, but also so you get like that's a new hire too. So you're not hiring two new people at the same time, and you kind of get into a flow with them because it does take a while. You are offloading tasks, but they're not going to do it exactly like you would do it, right? So there's some
mhm.
like editing and like communication that has to happen. That would be a lot to take on at the same time. Obviously possible, but and then I would recommend, honestly, a business coach. I feel like talking to somebody that has either been through it or has helped other people do it is huge. And I know it's scary to like spend the money, but I've, invested in business coaching and I feel like it has helped me grow so much. Just like therapy, right? Like we get insights that maybe we would have never had or are hard to say out loud or
Mhm.
just the accountability, right? Like, hey, we made this plan. I paid X amount of dollars to be in that 1 hour appointment. I'm going to make sure I follow through with this.
I think that's such a good point to bring up with business coaching is like there is this investment piece, but I think that a big thing that you get from the investment is getting to your endpoint faster with less mistakes. And I think I talk about that a lot with like the courses and the community that I have is like, of course, like you can find all of this information, out there and piece all of it together. But the whole point of like having it like in these organized ways from somebody who has been through it firsthand is that like we are going to get you to the end point in a more streamlined and quicker way. Like we're not messing around here. We know the goal that we want to get to and like we are going to get there. And it is so valuable. I mean, I've worked with coaches myself. Like it's such amazing insight to have from people who are on the other side of like the next thing that you want to be doing.
And I think it really helps you get into that like business owner, CEO hat. Like, cause it's a big transition from just being a
Yeah.
therapist, solo practice to like group practice, right? Whole new hat that you're wearing. And I feel like anytime I've worked with business coaches, it's very like, that's not a good idea. And I think we should do this instead, right? Because you're coming more from the therapist perspective and like
Yeah.
that's not maybe sustainable or that's not what's like appropriate for this or, whatever it is. I feel like that guidance is just so helpful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Have you worked with your business coach throughout the whole process? Have you gone like on and off? Like, what do you feel like has been most beneficial for you?
So I've worked with a business coach and I did more like of a group one, just financially. That's what was in the cards at the time. And it was really helpful to like hear stuff and like grow on Instagram. And then I kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, well, I feel like I'm outgrowing the group part of it and really wanted one-on-one. So I've been focusing more on like Instagram growth recently. And I love having that one-on-one conversation with somebody and thinking about like, okay, these are the things that I've got coming up. How do I balance stuff? But then also how do I like appropriately market for it so that people even know that it's going on? Yeah, because again, it's a lot to be seeing clients, supervising, and trying to still grow the practice.
I love that. And I love calling out that like you can transition your focus with like seeking out help and support as you continue to grow. And like it's okay to outgrow the spaces that were once helpful for you.
Yeah.
If someone listening is thinking about joining a group practice, what do you think are some green flags that they should look out for?
I feel like that's such a hard question because I think it really depends on the person, right? Like,
Yeah.
why are you joining a group practice? What about that makes sense for you? And those would be your green flags, right? So not everyone is going to be the same. Some people are joining group practice because they're like, I don't want to deal with marketing. I don't want to deal with billing, insurance. I want to just show up, do the thing, and go home, right? So if that's a thing that you care about, think about what are the things that are necessary for that, right? That they provide referrals, an EHR, maybe a place to see clients. Maybe you don't care as much about the money or benefits or whatever it is. So I think you kind of just have to figure out what are your things.
It's actually such a great answer because it does differ for everybody. And I know some people that I've had in my practice for years and years and years. And I'm always like, hey, like, are you going to start your own? Like, I'll help you. Like, I'll support you through it. And they're like, I don't want to worry about I just want to see clients and like get my paycheck and leave. And I'm like, amazing. Like, that's exactly what we could do for you. But I do think that some folks just need to like gain the confidence to see folks in private practice before they go out on their own or just get out of, like a bad agency situation and are looking for, like a better work environment or culture. And I think you're so right. Like establishing like what your own goals and values are in the work that you're doing and then finding what aligns.
Right. Yeah. Because someone else's green flags, I can be like, oh my God, I would never accept that. Right. So you kind of just have to figure out what's good for you and follow that. But like really sit down and like write it out. Right. Like, what do I want to make sure I find in my next place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that advice. People should really take that advice with them from this. Before we wrap up, I thought a nice closing question would be like, what do you feel like success looks like for you now as a group practice owner? And like, has your idea of success changed over time?
I think I've always just envisioned having like a boutique small group practice. So I don't envision being somebody who has like 30 therapists in her group practice. So I like the idea of kind of just me and my two associates, and each of us has a full caseload. And we're just known as the people that treat trauma and offer EMDR. Like to me, that is success.
I love that. Do you feel like that's changed at all, or do you feel like you've remained pretty on brand with that?
I think I've remained pretty on brand because I knew from the beginning that I didn't want a large group. I think I was open to seeing, I think in California, the max, like one licensed therapist can supervise is 6 at a time in your practice. So I think I was always like open to potentially growing that big. But now that I'm like here, I'm like, I think I'm kind of good. I like the idea of having the boutique practice and then working on things in Instagram of like brand deals or like that kind of stuff, but keeping this for now.
So important, I think, to know, especially with the introduction of social media. And I think getting caught in like social media comparisons to know like when you've reached your growth limit, like, and when you've reached the point where it's like, I'm actually really good where I am right now. And I think I even get this question of like, well, where do you want to take your group practice from here? And I'm like, oh no, I'm actually fine. Like I have the interns, I have my fully licensed folks, like we're at like a sustainable place with referrals and caseloads and like everything. And this actually is what is really working for me. But I think that we so often see like, I have 20 clinicians in my group practice. I'm a 7-figure group practice owner making over $1 million a year. And it's okay if that's not your journey. Like it's okay if you're starting a group practice with the intention of being boutique. And it's okay if you're starting a group practice, like you said, like with this passion of wanting to supervise future therapists and give them this like really great experience and supervision and setting them up for their own success in the future and like fueling that passion that you have while also hugely benefiting the therapist that you're working with. So I'm glad you mentioned that of like, of course I could supervise more and I could grow and I could do all of these things. I have the mechanics in place to do so, but I'm actually good like where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And I think it's just like something we have to practice that like we preach to clients too, right? Like I work with a lot of high achieving people. So they're used to like, what's the next goal? What's the next thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I do now? And it's like, how about we just enjoy what we've worked really hard for, right? Like this might feel like a plateau or you're not doing anything, but you've done a lot of work to get to this point. Like, let's just coast and enjoy it. That's okay.
Yeah, I love that so much. Is there anything that you feel like we haven't covered that you would want people out there who are starting a group practice, thinking about group practice, anything that you'd want them to know?
I feel like we covered a lot in a short amount of
did.
time. So I'm sure there's a million other things because there's a lot to owning a group practice, but I feel like
Yeah.
that's a really good starting place.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Oh my gosh. Well, Marissa, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all of your experiences and everything that's gotten you here. I think it's just so helpful for people to hear from, like you said, folks on the other side who have done the thing and done the work and gotten to this place of where they want to be, especially with group practice and all the growth that comes with it. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Before we let you go, I do just want to tell you about a few things. If you are in the early stages of building your practice, like you're still figuring out the foundational stuff, the LLC, the rates, the systems, getting your first clients in the door, I have a course called the Complete Launch Kit, which is a step-by-step program with 65 lessons that walks you through everything in the right order so you're not piecing it together from 8,000 different places. It covers forming your business structure, setting your rates, getting your systems in place, building a basic marketing foundation, and seeing your very first client in your private practice. If you are in that stage right now, that is the perfect place to start, and I will have the details in the show notes. If you already have a private practice and your marketing is just feeling inconsistent, you know that you need to post, you know you should be blogging, you know your Psychology Today profile needs work, but you're not actually doing any of it because you don't know where to start, that is what the HQ marketing community is for. It's a private community for private practice therapists, and every week you get social media prompts and blog post ideas that you can actually use, a library of expert trainings, a personal website and directory review from me with real feedback, and access to a custom AI sidekick built specifically for private practice marketing. And that is $37, and you can cancel at any time. And as always, if this episode was helpful for you, I would absolutely love and appreciate if you could leave a comment, subscribe, and share this with a therapist who needs a weekly private practice pep talk themselves. It is one of the best ways to get this in the hands of therapists who need it most. That is all for today, and I will see you in the next one.